Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larziliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve Larziliere. Today's guest is JT Belknap from DFM ToolWorks. How you doing, JT?
I'm doing all right, Steve. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, just found out we're in the same city. That's pretty exciting. Why don't you tell everybody about DFM ToolWorks? How'd you get started?
Sure. So we primarily sell woodworking tools, and some of the tools that we sell would be carpenter squares, card scrapers, dowel plates, and some other accessories that go with that. We also sell brass hammers for like chisel hammers. So I'm just listing a couple of the tools. We don't sell power tools. We don't sell power tool accessories, but yeah, and we make all of our own products, so I think that makes us maybe a little different than some of the other retailers, in that we're everything we make here in Chicago, or we source it from the United States and then assemble it and package it here. And then in terms of getting started, DFM started truly in 2018. About 2 years prior, I decided I wanted to work for myself in 2016, and I've been in manufacturing my whole career. So ever since I graduated college, I've been doing manufacturing as an engineer or running other people's businesses. So in 2018, I was listening to podcasts, so I was learning about business, about e-commerce, on different podcasts, and learning how to identify opportunities on Amazon. And so one of the opportunities I saw on Amazon was there really weren't many tool companies selling on Amazon that were US based. So there was all kinds of overseas sellers. And back in 2018, for example, with card scrapers, you really only had 2 or 3 choices, and they were all from Europe. So you could buy a British one, or you could buy a Swedish one. Today, there's ourselves, and then mostly Chinese sellers. So that little marketplace has changed a lot. And so the reason I got started with card scrapers is my first product actually on Amazon was a wood product. So I identified I had access to a CNC router.
Yeah.
And I saw people selling wooden grill scrapers. So think of like a little paddle, looks almost like a canoe paddle, but you're using it to scrape your grill.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I posted to Instagram, which was another new thing for me in 2017, a bunch of woodworkers were commenting on, "Oh, that looks so cool, looks really awesome," and so that's what drew me into the woodworking arena was Instagram, and the community there seemed really nice and vibrant. And 2018 was when social media felt more social.
Yeah. You could also grow super fast too, because it was all organic. Yeah.
Yes. So I made lots of online friends in 2018, and back then, when I posted to Instagram, I actually made money. I wasn't paying for ads at the time.
Yeah.
So you could really bootstrap it. So anyway, that's kind of how I got started, was through Instagram and Amazon.
Huh.
And so Amazon is still our biggest distribution channel.
Yeah.
We do sell on our website, but it's, kind of an 80-20, 70-30 split. Most of the revenue is through Amazon.
How big is your team now? Oh, well, I'm sorry. Let me back up a bit.
Sure.
Those first couple years, was it just you? Did you bootstrap it? Did you take out loans?
Yeah.
Like, what was that like? I mean, especially for like a manufacturing business, right?
Yeah. So it was a combination of credit card debt, so
Yeah. That's
taking out a
expensive
business
money.
credit card.
That's expensive money, but you got to believe in yourself to do that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and to give people an idea, I think that credit card, I didn't have like amazing credit by any means, but they still gave me $20,000 to go spend on whatever I wanted. So
Yeah.
and then the other big thing was splitting expenses with somebody else. So I found somebody else who wanted to machine products for automotive.
Okay.
And so we split a CNC machine. So we
You went halvesies on a CNC?
That's right. Okay. That's right. And went halvesies on a not super nice manufacturing space. I wouldn't even call it a manufacturing space.
Industrial.
An industrial space where the landlord had divided up like 100,000 square foot space into 20 units. So think of he was using roofing material to kind of divide up the spaces. Yeah. So it wasn't even like chain link fence or anything. It was
like metal sheets,
Yeah.
Like on like nailed up on framing 2x4s or whatever.
Either 2x4s or using pallet racking as walls. So it's actually kind of smart how they.
Yeah.
Like if I were to become an industrial landlord, I might do something similar. Maybe nicer.
So it was cold and loud, basically.
Cold or hot. So think of like a hot tin roof, like in the summer, easily 100 degrees in the shop.
For sure.
So we were there for a couple of years, and initially it was just me. So like the first year or so is just me, and then I hired somebody part-time to help with packaging and mostly assembly type work, and then every time and so today we only have 2 people full-time, but the way I've structured it is I have a lot of part-time people helping me. So like I have a part-time accountant who literally works 8 to 10 hours a month, helping me with the business. And then I have an agency that helps me with Amazon. I have an agency that's just starting to help me with Google Ads. So I mean, there's multiple people that I'm managing, but I can't afford
a full-time
40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And in terms of the full-time employees, one of the things that we've focused a lot on is automation. So, I have a robot that helps cut a lot of the squares that we make. So that robot works overnight, and then we work during the day. Kind of, that's how we kind of split our time generally.
Yeah.
So you can think of it as like a third or fourth employee that part of the reason I appreciate that is our business is very seasonal. So most of our customers are hobbyists, and so they're woodworking in their garage in the winter, and then they're outside playing with their kids or doing other outdoor activities in the summer.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going into our seasonal period. And the reason I bring that up is with automation, I don't have to lay anyone off in the summer. It just means the robot isn't working as much.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So
That's
that's kind of why so that's another piece of the business that we're trying to solve. I've been dabbling in things other than woodworking, but
Like other products or other businesses?
yeah,
Yeah.
no. For now, just other products. We've done things like a very fancy mechanical pencil
Mm-hmm.
or a pen. We had an ice press that is really focused on people that love whiskey, which is again
Yeah.
kind of an offshoot. So most of my customers are male.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd say 95% of my Instagram audience is male, according to Instagram.
Yeah.
So, I thought I had the ability to sell some products focused on what men want, and being a man myself, I felt like I could identify some of those where I think the challenge has been, though, that it's very clear that my customer list is not as interested in some of those items. So it's been fun, but expensive to experiment with some of those things like the pens and the ice press.
For sure.
And so I'm learning some lessons there, and we're kind of refocusing on woodworking now, because we need to we need to pay the bills.
That's fascinating. And which probably helps to have like a big distribution platform like Amazon to keep
Yes.
things going so that you can experiment on that, right?
Yeah,
On
yeah, and the other cool thing about Amazon is the scalability. So, for example, we're about to launch a new card scraper where we CNC machine all the profiles and stuff. And in a normal small business, we'd be super busy trying to pack all these orders over the weekend. Whereas we're going to try to ship it all to Amazon first and then launch the product.
True.
And so the nice thing about that is, even if, say, we sell several hundred or 1,000 of these units within a week, nothing really changes for us back at the shop. It's
You're
just
still making. You're still making.
Yeah, and we're not having to hire a temp, or we're not having to work 80 hours that week to fulfill all those orders.
Yeah.
So that's really the benefit to Amazon, is when we need them, they're there for us. And when we don't need them, they're not like asking for a check.
Sure.
Now, I will say they do take a lot of our money. So,
Yeah. But they save
and
you
it's
a lot of overhead.
That's right. So when things are lean, Amazon doesn't ask for any money, and when things are good, they're taking lots of money.
Yeah.
So yes, it's high variable cost and a low fixed cost
For sure.
type scenario.
For sure. How so you came from a background of engineering and just like engineering and manufacturing and how did woodworking come into play? Like, are you a woodworker as well?
I can say that before starting this company, I have made some of my own furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 10 years ago, I had dreams of maybe making my own furniture lines.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't get into woodworking as a tool maker because I loved woodworking. I always did woodworking because I didn't have the means to afford what I wanted.
Sure.
Right? So I was the guy making a slab table 10 years ago, before river tables were even a thing.
Yeah.
Because I really liked that aesthetic.
For sure.
But I couldn't afford to pay a craftsman myself.
For sure.
So what I can say is that part of the reason I got into woodworking tools was it was a small enough market that I could afford to get into with a credit card.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to go raise a bunch of venture capital. I didn't have to mortgage my house
Yeah.
to get started.
Yeah. Yeah.
In
That's
retrospect, I wish I had started with more money.
yeah. Yeah.
But
You know what? Yeah. One thing that I'm learning, and I'm sure you learn this too. It's like there's never like the whole idea of using money to move faster is like a crazy concept because I feel like most people are like, I'm just gonna create money, or I'm just gonna take what little money that I have and I'm just gonna go with it. And there really is an unlock to be able to get massive amount of money and then just deploy it on like, more marketing, more innovation, more help too, right? And
yeah,
um, what I'm curious about for you is how as you started to like envision where you wanted to be and build this business, like, I mean, you mentioned a robot. Like, how did you start thinking about that? Was that your engineering brain looking at like solutions?
yeah, and I think it was also from all my experience when I used to spend everyone else's money.
Ah,
So, so I worked at Toyota Motor Manufacturing, the vehicle manufacturer. That was my
yeah,
first job. And so back in the 2000s, robots were super expensive,
yeah,
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
yeah,
But because we had the volume, it made sense. And so the big change today is those robots are way cheaper, probably a quarter of the cost of what they used to be.
yeah,
Um, there's still an investment, right? So like the robot that I purchased all in was about $60,000. So it's not a small purchase.
yeah. On
But
top of the
it's
CNC.
right. And the
Yeah.
CNC was over 100,000. But,
Mm-hmm.
um, one of the things to remember as an entrepreneur is it's all about what people like to call cash flow, which is kind of this
Yeah.
nebulous term. But what it really means is, what's my loan payment, right?
Yeah.
I didn't start with 100 grand. I started with a business, and then after 2 years, I had enough financial information to go to a loan company and go
Mm-hmm.
buy that $100,000 machine.
Yeah.
And because interest rates were super low back in 2020,
Yeah.
um, it was reasonable.
Yeah.
Kind of like a small mortgage.
For
So,
sure. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
um, so so yeah, that's kind of hopefully answers your question on the robot, which was I have a lot of experience spending other people's money.
Yeah.
Um, and so now that it's my money, the robot made sense because it was half the cost of another mill.
Yeah.
So the idea was to get more productivity out of the mill without doing a second or third shift person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's
so
cool. Very cool.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What how is this year looking for you? What are the plans this coming year?
I would say year over year, it certainly hasn't gotten better on Amazon, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's more competition every year,
Yeah.
and with Amazon, it's very common for people to carbon copy your product. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you look for my squares, you'll see a carbon copy of it down to all the features. It'll look almost identical. Um, and so while they aren't necessarily beating me out of the market, it just means like, let's, for rough numbers sake, say they took 20% away from what I made last year on that one product. So for me, the focus is getting more products out more quickly this year,
For sure. For
to
sure.
just kind of stay ahead of them.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but the other focus, like I said, is to maybe refocus on Amazon because the search volume is so massive. I mean, there's
So massive.
hundreds of millions of people in the United States alone shopping on Amazon. So
Maybe
there's
this is something for maybe another conversation, but I just there's like I mean, you're an engineer and you understand like information and data, right? Like there's a
yeah
power that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize in the power of data and databases. Um,
yeah
so like
uh,
Amazon has so much data on purchasing. And
yeah
if people buy this, they're more likely to buy this. If they
yes
move addresses, they're more likely to be this type of customer. If they're like this gender, like, and to be able to tap into that and harness our own data is like as a customer. I mean, you just said it, like most of your clients are male, right? And you
yeah
said that there's it's seasonal, right? So like they're making in the winter in their garage, and like now you're moving into, and like how are you employing or utilizing data in your business? I'm sure, like especially with e-commerce, you must
yeah
be looking at click-through rates and all, you know what I mean?
yes yeah yeah. So part of the reason I've done well on Amazon is by using third-party tools to
Mhm.
analyze the data that's freely available on Amazon.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that your listeners might notice is pick a very popular product.
Yeah.
Let's say baby diapers always comes to mind. I don't know why, but um, you pick a product like that, and 3 years ago they wouldn't do this, but today they openly publish the number of sales in that last month for that product.
Huh.
So what it allows you to do is kind of get a very good idea of market size and market
Yeah.
share for free.
Wow.
Um, and so a brief example would be, now it's public knowledge. If you go look at my card scrapers on Amazon, it might say 500 plus sold in the last month.
Yeah.
Okay. So Amazon is now making that data public, but one of the key advantages back in 2018 was data companies were selling that information to
Yeah.
people like me for very cheap. So for like $20 a month, I could get access to all this information so that I'm not guessing as much as to what product I should launch.
Yeah.
Um, so that, so back to your point about being an engineer, one of the things that I did struggle with is I struggled selling on Facebook last year.
Hmm.
And I think the ad creative and that creativity piece
Yeah.
is difficult, even if you hire an agency, because you're still kind of guiding them a little bit. And
Yeah.
I didn't have the funds to hire like a Hollywood agency, to make like this
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
video. Um, so I spent a lot of money on Facebook and Instagram, and I learned a lot. Um,
Hmm.
but it was an expensive learning experience,
Yeah. Yeah.
to more than I would care to admit on the podcast. But
Yeah. You
it was
could
a lot of
you
money.
could let us spend a lot of money learning on Facebook, and like, you know, yeah, there are so many factors with Facebook. Like, was it your creative? Is it the landing page? Is it, the targeting, right? Like all of these things.
Yeah,
It's pretty fascinating stuff. Um, that's
yeah.
cool. All right, so this is a part of the podcast where I give you any sort of marketing or business advice. Is there anything that you're struggling with that I could help you out with?
I think. Well, one of the things that I would be curious about, since you run a podcast,
Uh-huh.
is, do you believe, like, here's one of the things I've noticed is there's a lot of content creators that have started small podcasts,
Yeah.
which, just further makes it more and more competitive in the podcast landscape. One of the questions I would have is, do you believe brands should be creating podcasts, or do you think that's kind of like a nice to have type thing, or do you think it's almost a necessity? And I shouldn't say necessity. Do you think it could be a really great lead gen, or do you think it's really not for a brand per se, if that makes sense?
That's an awesome question. I love that question. I love that question a lot. Is there anything else to follow up with that, or?
No, my concern is that I feel like podcasting has gotten pretty competitive because I'm an avid podcast listener,
Yeah,
but I only have so many hours in the car every day.
yeah.
And so I literally have more podcasts than I can possibly ever listen to. So I've had to go cherry pick now. It's not like in the old days I could just let it run because I only had 3 or 4. Now I have 12, so it's just,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I'm
you
just
also
curious.
has your life circumstance changed? Like anything happened in your life that,
I think my interests have changed a little bit. So maybe I
Okay.
need to pare back on my catalog, but again, I was just curious, like for you, do you find that your podcast is really driving a lot of web traffic, or do you feel like you're having to resort to other lead gen to really augment the business, or do you
So
feel like the podcast?
this is a question I think about a lot, right? And so I used to um I used to utilize my podcast to develop. I used to use the podcast to literally just to learn, right?
Yeah,
And then the next phase was to gain more credibility. And then the next phase was to develop an audience and then, sell to the audience, right? And so, like, if you listen to my podcast, like I have 300 plus episodes, I have had at many different points different advertisements. So like I've had other advertisements in the past, and uh and I truly believe that right now, that, like, I know that you're an avid podcast listener, but not everybody is. And I literally just saw a graph yesterday on saying how much the podcast industry is still small. It's still small and still growing. Um, and but what I do love about the podcast, and this is something that I tell clients all the time, is that the podcast is a content generator. There's no other form of media in which you can take this one piece and then create multiple things as a result of it, right? And so so to answer your question, yes, I think there should be a DFM ToolWorks podcast. Like, I absolutely believe that that should happen. And what will end up happening as a result of that is that you need to be building a list, because if you're 70-30-80-20 on
yeah,
Amazon, you're not capturing the 80% of emails.
yeah, yeah,
And what will end up happening is that, like, you can create this piece and then chop it up, short forms, reels, articles, blogs, and there's just like everything that comes as a result of it. And so that was actually another question I had asked, is that, like, A is, you're an American made tool company. You're in the Midwest. I saw on your website you're all about jobs and keeping things in the United States. Like, how, like, to be able to I'm literally, I'll there's this fascination there's this method that I'm really fascinated with right now. It's called build in public. Do you know, have you heard of that?
no,
And
build in public.
yeah, so a lot of tech companies use this, and I'm utilizing this myself. And I didn't realize, in my first business, I built in public before it was like a thing. And it's building in public is, you literally document your steps, your goals, your processes, your audience, like, and you build an audience authentically around that. And you're not like a mega tool company, like you're, just a couple people, right? Like
Yeah.
you can gather a lot of you can build an audience around your story and your brand. And like, I can't even imagine I didn't see it on your Instagram, but like I'd like to see I'd like to see ASMR videos of your robot making these cards, right? There's a lot of things that you're kind of not capturing, and a podcast can totally help with that, right? Like you can have your other team members, you can have, your customers, you can have just different people on, because I think at the end of the day, DFM is more about than what you're portraying. There's an aesthetic, there's a mission, there's a vision, there's something there that that having a podcast, and it may not come out in the first 5 episodes. I probably didn't find my voice on the podcast probably until like maybe episode 100.
Yeah.
But that's because I was still learning in the beginning. Like you're an engineer, you've owned this company for a while. It's not like you're starting out. So like you can probably find your voice a lot quicker and get your mission, your vision out there even more so at a faster rate. And so again, to me it's like I love podcasts, and I've like, as a result of it, I'm like doubling down even more. So I'll tell you. So I have multiple ways in which I bring in money. I do ads, I have Facebook groups, I have emails, and I have podcasts.
Mm.
And then I had like Instagram and so like personally I wasn't as inspired to post on Instagram as much, right? Because you go into different waves, right?
Yeah.
And I was able to continue growing my business without any dip because of my podcast and
Yeah.
because of my email list that I generated as a result of it, right? Like there's a lot of insights that you have.
Yeah, we've been really stagnant on the email growth, and
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that is because Instagram has gotten so expensive, or sorry,
Yeah.
Meta has gotten so
Meta.
expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and the shift in focus has gone. When I talked to all these agencies, all they wanted to do was convert the customer right then and there, because they wanted to show a return on ad spend immediately.
Yeah.
And whenever I suggested to them the idea of building an email list, they kind of looked at me weird, like, why would you pay us to do that? And I was just kind of like, well, because they might not be ready to buy right now, but that doesn't mean they're a bad
You need an
customer.
email. You need an email. Like, well,
Yeah. And
because go ahead.
so I was going to say is we do have a decent sized email list. What I'm saying is it hasn't truly grown a lot in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It's been, it was like a hockey stick
Mm-hmm.
in 2018, 19, 20, and then kind of in 2020 when the pandemic hit, um, I got so bogged down in just the crazy online growth that I
Yeah,
like lost sight of building a list.
for sure.
So yeah, I appreciate the encouragement to start a podcast. I'm gonna think about what I don't want to call it an angle, but like what would be compelling for my audience
Yeah.
that I'm also interested in. Because, for example, I'd be super interested in just talking to other business owners,
Mm-hmm.
like selfishly, because I just
Yeah,
want
but
to learn from
that's
them.
selfish. That's not what your audience potentially wants. You know what I
Right,
mean? Like,
right, right.
well, yeah, I have some ideas for you, but
Yeah,
I think the important thing is it's about the content creation and it's about the brand. So like my little philosophy is like you build a brand, you build a community around that brand, and then you sell them. And so
Yeah.
when you build a community, it's really around your brand, right? And it's really around like what your yeah, it's just like you can build a amazing community with a podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then you cool. Was that helpful?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. It's a reminder to um, maybe focus more on the top of the funnel again instead of just trying to go for the kill all the time, which
Yeah.
you know, or Gary Vee talks about like jab, 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 right
Yeah,
hook,
yeah.
right? So you
Yeah, yeah,
gotta
yeah.
you gotta provide more value up front, and
For
so
sure. For
uh,
sure.
we'll be thinking about that. So yeah, Steve, I certainly look forward to talking more here in the future.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna I'll come and visit you next week if you're around. Like
Yeah, yeah, no, that'd be great.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I'll come in I'll come maybe we could grab lunch or something. But yeah,
sure.
I'd love to come and visit and check out the robot and CNC and see what's going on. So cool. Tell everybody website,
Yeah,
Instagram so they can follow you.
awesome. Well, again, Steve, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to having this episode come out so we can.
Yeah, tell everybody your website so they can check out your work.
Sure. Yeah, it's dfmtoolworks.com. So that's D as in dog, F as in Frank, M as in Mary, toolworks.com.
Awesome.
And if you search for us on Amazon, we'll pop right up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, JT, for your time. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.